we have people participating in person.
I'm gonna answer, but I'm just trying to find.
Oh, they're still there. That's good. Yeah. And yes.
All right. I'd like to call to order the special meeting from the December 18th meeting. This is what's today's date? January 15th meeting of the Town of Somerville's Commercial Design Review Board. First, with no minutes. So are there any we only have one item on the agenda. Staff like to go over their comments.
Okay, so this is 725 Central Avenue, proposed flex space commercial development. They are requesting final approval. Preliminary has not yet been granted, but the applicant has been working with staff to work through comments from my previous staff report. So I'll go ahead and address those. So they have revised their proposal to remove any encroachment from the 49-inch oak tree beside building 1, with the exception of a canopy support that has been reviewed by the town arborist. So that has been approved at a staff level. Tree protection will be assessed via the review of their MS4 permitting. And what I mean by that is the actual location of tree protection will be assigned. As it's shown now, it just shows the required tree protection area. So staff will work with them on the actual tree protection as installed. Parking has been modified to allow the majority of the natural buffer at the end of the lot to remain. Some buffer areas do not meet with requirements due to site constraints, but staff feels that the landscaping plan has been revised to meet town standards otherwise. Of course, as always, DRB can approve reductions to the landscape buffers as necessary. As mentioned previously, this part of my staff report just addresses, it was in the previous staff report, but I encouraged the applicant to study our permitted uses in NB zoning. And that was another item that in the interim between meetings, the applicant has discussed with staff at length. So I feel there's a good understanding there. A photometric plan will be required before site disturbance permitting. But at this time, I will hand it over to the applicant.
All right, and if you, whether you're in person or online, you can state your name and your role in the project. So we know we're talking to the architect or we're talking to the engineer, we're talking to the owner. So if you just state your name and your role, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
And Abby, I don't know if you want me to jump to a particular slide.
No, I think I can just talk through the engineering portion. My name is Abby Ranson. I'm with Bowman Engineering. I'm the project engineer on this project. We did receive tree protection board approval on November 12th. We're still working with Justin, like Becca said, on specifics of the tree protection area, especially with the landscaping plan. Since our last meeting, we slightly rearranged the parking areas to save as many existing trees as possible. And the tree protection board did appreciate that. We now have a total of 53 parking spots, which meets the minimum 50 spaces. This is off of Central Avenue. It's zoned neighborhood business. There are 5,000 square foot buildings. It will be a new pump station location for Somerville CPW. Near the bottom of the screen there. And as I mentioned earlier, 53 total parking spaces. All utilities will be underground as well. If there's no questions on the engineering portion, I'll turn it over to Haas. Sure, Roger, did you want to go ahead and say anything in specific, or John?
I think you covered it, so I think we're okay, unless you guys have specific questions for us.
I've got one question. That 53 parking spots for basically 25,000 square feet is not a lot of parking. So like 2 per thousand. y'all gonna be able to get by with that little parking?
I have the calculations in here somewhere.
Well,
I believe it's 55 or 53 spaces we have there total.
you got, I counted 50, she just said 53.
Yeah, I believe that's the,
But
I think it's
basically, that's-
50 and then you have the ones that are all the way on the right-hand side. There's a couple that
No,
are
that
extra spaces.
includes those.
Okay.
Those are included. So you don't have a lot of parking, and I'm just bringing that up because we limit the number of parking spots, but we don't ever have the discussion, you ain't got enough parking. You sure can't park on the neighbor's property. But if you're flex space, you got some retail where you need at least 5 per thousand, something like that.
Mhm. I'm not sure of the
But-
exact,
I mean, you'd need about 25 just for the retail space, because that's 5,000 feet.
we actually had more parking, last time we met, but, in discussion with the tree protection board, we did remove a few of those on that side there where the bunch of trees are. It's a tight site. We've tried to fit as much parking as we possibly can, in these small spots of spaces.
Well, I mean, it's not, we don't care. It's not any skin off our nose, but I'm just bringing it up.
So do you meet the parking requirement or do you not?
Yes. Yes.
You
we
do.
Mhm. We have 3 extra than the
I
required.
believe we're over. Yes.
Okay. And can you talk about access to the site and is there lighting and
Sure. So the current plan now, we are still working with SCDOT on our entrance. That's still in the works. But it's something that we have talked to Wade Grooms about, and still working with him on. We are also working with Dominion on their lighting plan. We could have come up with something, but it wouldn't have been, to their standards. So, we want to make sure all of our underground utilities are finalized before we send something over to Dominion, to get that coordinated so that there's no conflicts. But that's something that we are working on with Dominion.
and how are you dealing with stormwater?
Stormwater for the site will be underground. And it will outfall to 725 or to Central Avenue, excuse me.
Where is it gonna be?
So there are, I don't know if you want to jump to this stormwater
There you
page or the grading and
Going
drainage
through.
plan. C400. Yeah, so those hatched areas will be the underground detention areas. We're still working on getting a geotech report and working with our underground detention providers for those areas. But those we have set aside specifically for underground detention.
If I may add something, the landscape plan also kind of wraps around those stormwater holding areas, kind of creating the buffer zone along the parcel line. So we have room for that analysis to come.
And where are the mechanical units going, the HVAC, that sort of thing?
Those will be placed on the roof of the buildings. And that's more, I don't know if the architect wants to jump in on that anywhere, but.
Or the transformers? Power?
Or transformer.
That would be in discussion with Dominion. I'm not exactly sure yet.
Your power is underground though, correct?
Yeah.
Becca, isn't there a requirement to have landscaping between the sidewalk and the building?
No.
Sorry. They have landscaping. I believe the requirement is 25% of foundation planting, but we don't have a specific in relation to sidewalks.
The only requirement that relates to sidewalk is between when parking and then a pathway. Adjacent to that pathway, you need to have landscaping, which we are we're having that 5 to 8 feet buffer is what we've provided And in general, a landscape plan has gone a little bit above and beyond the minimum code just because there are a lot of existing trees that we needed to mitigate for. So we provided a little bit more trees than your typical landscape minimum code is requiring. And the remainder of that would be a fee in lieu paid to the town.
Well, this site is hidden behind those houses on Central anyway. You can't even see it from the street.
Correct.
Totally invisible.
In terms of, I guess the portion that would be visible is kind of having those that gateway moment that's lined with trees to create that inviting kind of gateway and high quality landscaping for the flex space and the users to soften up the architecture and the parking.
Rebecca, you had a comment about the garage doors and making sure you all are comfortable with what the end users are going to be, because they can't be certain users.
Yes, we talked with the applicant about that at length. Just making sure it was understood what our interpretations based on our ordinance for warehousing and distribution versus having a retail component. And so that I feel very confident that the applicant understands that, and that there will be a check for that when the businesses start submitting their licensing. I review all of those. I feel very confident that they understand the requirements of the current zoning.
Is the turnaround, the dead end turnaround per IFC Appendix D?
The fire marshal looked at this at TRC, and he did not have any issues with the turnaround as shown. There was more parking there
Okay.
before, but it wouldn't have been a wider space for the truck to turn around.
Gotcha. Yeah, the offset aspect of the intersection looks like might be hard to maneuver, but if that was already cleared, then it should be fine.
Any other comments related to the site for now?
How are you gonna screen the air conditioning units on the roof? Because they're gonna be visible from the back of the building. You have parapet walls on the end walls in the front of the building, but not on the back.
And what is behind that? Is it just
And
property, nothing else? I mean, what can see the back of these buildings?
Right. It's access. I would like our architects to jump in as well and talk about the facade, but I'll talk about the general site layout and the landscaping that goes with it. But the back of it is there's a kind of a maintenance access pathway, and between that maintenance access pathway and the parcel line, we have very dense planting to create that visual buffer between the two zones. And that buffer is a little bit denser on the south since the residential
so they
zone.
got apartments in the front.
Yeah, so just to orient you guys, this is Central Avenue here. And this is where access to the site is. And then the pump station would be over here.
And you see those houses, that's where we have a much more intense buffer, planting buffer that separates the uses.
So is the intersection just being proposed as is, just a cut in the curb, no left turn lane, no signal, nothing? And what hours do you predict that the height of the operations of this complex to be? Is this mostly 9 to 5? Is this 9 to midnight? What's your guess? Because the flex space is still an unknown. Don't know what this means as far as traffic mitigation is. Can you talk about that? Or can somebody?
Yeah, I think, Roger, do you mind jumping in?
Sure. Can you hear me?
So
Roger's our client, the owner.
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
we can
Okay.
hear you.
Sure. Well, we do have that retail component and then we do have the flex space. So the flex space hours would be, 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 5 as normal hours. Sometimes I think with the retail, depending on what goes in there, they might, be there till 9 or 10 o'clock. I don't anticipate anybody being there till 12 or 1 or, wee hours, but business hours or maybe dinner hours. That's about as far as, we think it's gonna go.
You think there'll be any restaurant or,
That's possible,
Microbreweries.
we could get like a coffee shop in there or maybe like burger place or pizza place, something like that. But I don't think it's gonna be, very late.
like if they get a restaurant in here, those 53 parking spaces are gonna go away very quickly.
Well, if you have dinner hours, right, that's nighttime. So the, flex space tenants are more business hours. Nobody would be there during, dinner, time. Or very few would be there at that time, if any.
I think we ought to give them warning, they don't have enough parking, but that's up to them. Let them rule with it. They gotta gamble.
And like I said, that would be verified, if anytime there's a business moving into a space, there's always a zoning review to make sure that they meet all of the requirements. So that would be on the business. They would have to do their due diligence if they wanted to make sure that the use would actually work for the space. And that's for any space in town.
And also each space is 1,500 square feet. They're not, it's not a thousands of square foot use per tenant. So if it was a burger place or a pizzeria or something like that, how many people are going to go into a 1,500 square foot unit at any time?
Are there any other site questions? All right, can we move on to architecture?
I have one minor site question. So everywhere there's a garage door, you're showing a different paving pattern across the sidewalk. Is there a curb cut or is that just no curb cut at those locations and the garage door is just an aesthetic part of your architecture?
It's more of a transition zone to define the entrances. There are no curb cuts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You can drive into the garage doors. You
Well,
can drive, you can
you're
drive
saying
a
no.
vehicle in.
No.
She's saying no. So there is a curb, continuous curb along the sidewalk.
Well, there might not even be a curb.
You,
There's a
you
curb
can
line.
you can drive into the garage door. Yes.
You could.
You just about have to. So there may not be any curb between the parking and the sidewalk, in which case you'd need parking bumpers.
All right, then I'm confused.
Can we see the grading plan?
Yeah, this is not a sidewalk then?
It is a sidewalk,
A raised
a
sidewalk?
concrete sidewalk. It doesn't have to be raised though. But it may be. It's up to y'all. How you make the transition though to drive through where your overhead doors are, you'd end up with a lot of ramping in the sidewalk.
Right. So our grading plan shows a smooth transition, kind of a flush.
I believe there will be ribbon curb around the parking. And we'll make that transition from, we'll make the curb cuts.
Do you have a section through that or?
So there's no raised curve, it's all
There's-
flat.
This
ribbon
is
curve
Jim.
from Front to
It's
front.
Jim Ducker with Bowman. We can do a roll curb. So you don't have that kind of transition like you're talking about coming from a stand-up curb to something that's depressed to be able to drive in.
So you are gonna have a raised curve in front of the buildings.
It'll be
Whether-
rolled.
Yeah, but it's still raised.
Kind of a
6
roll
inches.
curb.
Well, it could be 4 inches.
Right, but it's not flat from door to door.
What is it gonna be?
It's going to be a rolled curb,
How high?
4 to 6 inches, but we can work on, Jim, is that a 4 inch?
I want to say it's
Roll
4 inches tall.
4 inch tall.
I'm not
roll curb.
looking at detail, but it's roll curb, so you don't have to do those transitions like you would with stand-up curb.
And is this continuous wherever they're showing a sidewalk on this plan all the way to Central Street?
Correct.
So it's a road curb all the way. And that transitions into the city curb somehow?
City doesn't have curb there. Doesn't even have a sidewalk there.
Okay,
So the finished floor is higher than the asphalt.
By 4 inches, yes.
4 or 6, 4 to 6. Okay. So there's no transitions at, like Bill was saying, at every garage door or every pedestrian door, there's no ramps down and up, and then down and up to the next one, down and up to the next
No,
one.
it's just a stamped concrete to kind of imply a transition zone in terms of the pavement change.
Transition
Just to-
zone into what?
In terms of pavement change, if you look at those stamped concrete, it's just a different texture to the concrete as you're entering, have your entryway to the building, just to define those moments a little bit more, but not an elevation change.
so you're just
Beside
doing
the roll.
a herringbone stamp at every garage door,
Uh,
Correct.
and
Correct.
then it's just a broom finish.
correct.
And
So-
then what is the street and the parking? Asphalt that someone mentioned?
Asphalt.
And it's
Black
con-
asphalt.
and it's concave. So the center line of the inverted crown. So the center line of the drive, all the water's gonna go to the center of the drive.
It's an inverted crown. So you have your buildings on each side, and then, which is elevated from the street 4 to 6 inches. And which is why the drainage is in the middle, so we could make sure we could fit water and sewer on either side of the drainage.
And what is the landscape peninsulas that are shown,
The islands.
the islands? What is that construction or elevation technique?
It could be raised curbs. It could be raised curb.
Roll curb, just like
Yeah,
everyone.
or roll curve, yeah, those as well. Yeah, it's kind of a continuous, as a rest.
It's showing as straight curve.
Yeah.
It's drawn as straight curve. It's
Okay.
not drawn as roll curve.
Where are you looking for it?
It's looking. And that's,
I mean, I can't tell by looking at this drawing here.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, but
Right.
it looks like it's straight.
And you
curve.
don't have a section showing this.
You don't have a section showing that now.
And so what about, as Bill mentioned, how are you stopping cars from going onto the sidewalk or going into the landscape islands?
Well, there's that 4 inch rolled curb, so there's some sort of elevation difference.
It's not gonna stop the car. Roll curve's not gonna stop the car. I feel like
Well, I mean, a lot of times you don't have a curb at all. You can just drive right into the landscape aisle.
well, that's why I was asking, because I don't want it flat from
Right.
door to door all the way across, right?
It won't be,
We know that
it
now.
will be, it will be
Is
flat.
this something you can develop further and review it with staff
Absolutely,
to make sure that we have pedestrian safety,
absolutely.
we
The-
have
the curb
vehicular
height-
stops?
Mhm.
The curb height will vary depending, your slab is fixed elevation. Your paving, asphalt paving varies in elevation. Therefore, the curb is gonna vary in height from 4 to 6 inches or whatever.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
I don't think we need to get into that. That's our, we usually work that out.
I just feel like it's kind of lacking detail on, they're trying to create kind of this neat space. But when you dial down into the details of how this is gonna look, it's odd to have rolled curb. roll curb's kind of a subdivision thing. Probably should be straight curb. The stamped concrete is not it's just not a high level of detail, you know, and from this, I can't tell why they are where they are. You know, I'd like to know, is each one of these at a garage door or is it a pedestrian door? Is
At a
it a
garage door.
landing? I feel like it's lacking the details that would make this place special.
Maybe if you can go to one of the architecture elevation and our architects can speak to the entryway and for the section elevations.
That's got landscaping at the bottom of the buildings. It's not shown on the site plan.
Correct. We're not, it was just not enough. That rendering needs to be changed. That it's not enough width for any planting to survive.
The buildings are too
realistically.
big. The buildings are too big. It's not that there's not enough room for planting. The buildings are too big. There needs to be a space between the back of sidewalk and the building. Usually that's 5 to 10 feet.
Yeah.
But this is the buildings going all the way up to the concrete. So it's going to look very sterile. And you're going to have, I don't know, 60 feet or 40 something feet of 42 feet maybe of just pavement once you go back there. That's my concern. It's just the buildings I think are tracking good, but the siting, the details on the site are lacking.
Becca, can you go back to the perspective of the site? I thought I saw some. No,
The architectural rendering.
right.
If you want to make a small point and then we can pay attention to this, where the stamped concrete is kind of aligns, if that elevation was showing to the main entrance of just the pedestrian doorway to the stores. And since the footprint of the buildings, the flex space is on a smaller scale of the retail flex space, and we have nice buffers on the side, we wanted to provide this continuous sidewalk in front of it that can spill out and and therefore kind of have our landscaping adjacent to the building to soften the architecture, but we're open to your suggestions.
You're putting landscape on the sides of the buildings, not in the front.
Correct. Just
Okay.
for that spill out area for that we want to have in front of the buildings.
Can you go to the next slide, Becca?
If that 2 feet strip of planting is your concern, you may be able to work with that, but
This is
Our
showing
plans are not showing
foundation
that.
Planning on the sidewalk,
They just said it's not
but
accurate.
it's not.
Is it not required?
it's not required.
No, it's not required by ordinance. the
But it's
DRB
shown on the-
has purview.
On the renderings.
Yeah.
And the DRB has purview over these things.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've kind of gone above and beyond the planting, the number of planting and the density to offset for mitigation strategy. And that overall kind of enhances the ecological feature of the site and softens it up a little
You're not
bit.
going above and beyond. You've done everything you could to meet mitigation, then whatever mitigation you can't meet, you're paying into the tree bank.
Correct.
It's really not above and beyond. You're doing the minimum.
Above and beyond
We
in
want
terms
to,
of
we
the-
want to encourage you to do the best that you can possibly do, not just check a code box of saying, well, we need 10 of those, we got 10 of these. We just want to see the best project within reason you can do, and to think through all those design aspects of what makes a good sidewalk, what makes a good street, what makes good buildings. Let's not just design to code minimum. You know, let's try to meet somewhere in the middle where we can come up with the best project. All right.
Respectfully, sir, I would have respectfully, sir, I would have to say that we have gone above and beyond. If you look at flex space in the general area, the design here is well above and beyond. You know, we've worked with DRB to keep the trees intact, as many as we could. All the good and healthy trees we're keeping. There's some that we had to get rid of. However, to say that this is not above and beyond project for flex space, I do not agree with that.
Noted. I was talking specifically about landscape because the statement was made, that the landscape went above and beyond And I was pointing out that if it's in relation to the tree inches, it's not. You're meeting what you were supposed to meet. Thank you. Can we move on to architecture, please?
Can we look at this drawing right here a minute?
Sure.
If you look at this drawing, you can see that the sidewalk in front of each building is wider than the sidewalk where the landscaping is and the buildings are not. So if you made the sidewalk narrower to whatever it is on these other areas, you'd have enough room for a little foundation plant.
It looks like that might only be on the Plan South building.
That's on Plan South. But the sidewalk is the same width across the road on Plan, whatever it is. I don't have a note there.
On this plan, is there an encroachment in building 1 into the buffer or setback? I see a dashed line to the rear.
There's
You're talking about this dash line here.
yes.
Yes.
There's a small encroachment, I think building 1, the back right corner,
Into a building setback or a buffer?
to a land use buffer. I think it's less than a foot, if I remember correctly.
What's the distance from I guess face a curb, back a curb to the building facade?
I believe it's 7 feet.
Your sidewalk,
Yes,
From back a curb or face a curb?
from back of curb.
Back, curb, okay.
Back of curb.
all you need is 5 feet to
Yeah.
meet code. So you get 2 foot. You get 2 foot of foundation planting in, but there wouldn't be much of it because you have doors everywhere.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of nitpicking because you're not going to get a whole lot of foundation planting at the front elevation due to the number of openings.
Right.
And your entrance ways, you gotta have 5 by 5 in front of each door. So, and then you got your overhead doors, you got concrete going in those overhead doors. You don't end up with a much possibility. The buildings are what, 15-foot fronts or what?
Um, Down.
Some of them are wider. The single building across the street with 3 units, those look like they're 25-foot wide units and the other ones are 15. Is that correct?
I don't know if the architect wants to jump in here on what the buildings.
They do vary in size depending on the building.
Okay, this is excuse me, this is Justin Smith with Vineyard Architecture. Yeah, they vary in size. They're 25 feet for building 1. And then $27 feet 8 inches for building 2, so Plan South.
All right, would you like to go ahead and start talking or present the architecture to us?
Yeah, can I make one kind of final comment based on this foundation plantings that we're discussing?
Sure.
I don't even know that it's a compromise, but just from a spacing standpoint, if we could maintain the 5-foot sidewalk along the face of the buildings and then maybe get a 2-foot planting strip along the roll curb everywhere except where there is the stamped concrete to access the garage or the garage doors.
And the walk doors.
I'm sorry?
And the walk doors, you need a 5-foot concrete going into the walk doors too.
Well, we would still have, the sidewalk itself would be 5 feet wide, so.
No, yeah, but you're gonna have a planting strip there 2 feet. So
They wanna
you
put
have
the
to
strip
return
along the back of
5 foot
curb.
Back in.
They want to put the strip along the back of curb. That's what he's proposing.
Yeah.
Not along the
Or
building,
not on the
along the
building?
back of the curb. Yeah,
On the back
which would be
the
Yeah,
piece
I
of
think that would
furniture.
solve both of your issues and what we're discussing here.
That's not a very good idea,
Yeah,
Why
we're
is that?
happy to, excuse me.
because you can't get out of a car and get on the
No, it
sidewalk.
would be on, along
Yeah.
here, along the north.
Yeah.
Along the north,
We're
that's
happy.
where the 2-foot planter would be.
Okay.
So there's not a car conflict. It would just, it's gonna direct you on where,
It's still not a very attractive idea.
not really.
I just want to add that we're happy to work with the staff on however we need to update this and we can. The only pointer I want to make here, and maybe my above and beyond comment was misleading. The tree mitigation, yes, we're responding to, but the buffer and the parking planting and the planting along the pathway not only meets the code, but we have more trees above and beyond the code minimum for the buffer. We've added trees to mitigate the tree for the existing trees, and that overall is enhancing the landscape. So if the feedback is we can add that the 2 feet, but if since it's going to be broken, I wonder, looking at the site holistically and its landscape and the canopy that it's going to provide, that may be sufficient, something to think about.
Well, with regards to this 2-foot landscape buffer at the back of the curb, what's the real reason for a road curb versus a raised curb? Is there something we're not seeing? Anybody?
So you don't have all the transitions from a stand-up curb to being able to pull and, get into the garage sections, the garage door sections. So it's not quite as broken up. It's just a constant roll curb that you can, if you needed to get into the garage area with a vehicle, you could do so without providing all those ups and downs in a regular stand-up curve, 6-inch stand-up curve.
Line of progress, no curve at all. Flat transition.
All right.
Yeah.
We need to move on to architecture.
Architects, this is your turn.
Becca, can you go back to that narrative? Page 10.
Are the garage door sections or the garage door facade, is that optional or what's the story behind that? Because it's not appearing on any of the renderings. You're just leaving the option open for that?
Shane, Roger, do you mind?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Just what is the purpose, I guess, of the wipe downs or the stamped concrete for the garage being along the facade of any of these buildings? When you're looking at the renderings, we're not seeing any like garage doors or what would be vehicular accessible. Is that to have the option in the future if you have a user that would need that? Okay.
The
All right, I
garage
didn't see
doors
this.
are on the ground.
There's some renderings
Okay.
should show the difference in the concrete.
Okay.
The garage doors are there not as an option. They're there for a function. So that people can get in and out if they like to, whether by car or by walking in and out of there. And the stamped concrete sort of delineates where people can, come in and, drive in and drive out.
Okay, I missed that.
All right, if you could.
If
present
you look at the other
architecture.
renderings, you'll see it. Yep, there you go.
Can you present the architecture and inform us on what your inspiration was, how it relates to the Low Country, and what you're proposing?
Yeah, again, I'm Justin Smith, I'm with Vignette. We really tried to capture just the size and scale and some of the detailing of Somerville and some of the Low Country vernacular that's consistent throughout. One of the big comments that came out of our last DRB meeting was the overall industrial commercial feel that was being achieved with the garage doors and some of the entrances. So our response was we tried to soften all that with colors, board and batten, gooseneck lighting. And then even with the garage doors themselves, we went with more of a carriage style garage door that that's, you know, obviously more consistent with residential type looks in Charleston and Somerville. So really that was it. We were trying to just you know, bring the scale, bring it down to be a little softer. And then just have, you know, you can see there some oversized bracketing and metal roof return. So the idea was, you know, just to try and, it is a commercial space, but just have some detailing that's more residential in feel. So that was kind of what we were aiming for.
I have a question. So it looks like on the corner building, you varied the architecture and did a very good job. But then for the rest of the building, you're just repeating the design and just changing colors. So why did you not continue, you know, with a different architecture, the different motifs, to try to create some uniqueness and a aesthetic for the length of this project with your other buildings that you did with this building?
So is the comment on the rest of the buildings just add some variety to the each individual units themselves?
Yeah, again, I think, I don't know if it's just details, but looking at this building, you did a great job. I mean,
We need to look at each
I
building.
can
because
clearly see
We're not getting a view here of each building. We're just looking at the coffee shop building.
that you're trying to create a community, you know, and a nice aesthetics for your customers. But then when we go into the majority of the project, it's the same design motif with just different colors. And I
Yeah.
think you missed the boat.
Can we look at each building?
I think the idea between, I think these are two different types of uses of building. Whereas that corner building is meant to be more of the jewel that, you know, has the outdoor, you know, is in the canopy of the tree and it has more of that vibe. The
Three's
rest of
different
these
color.
are meant more to be, you know, that mom and pop retail store or
Same
whatever.
detail.
Right.
Red garage doors.
Well, I think that's where it's confusing, Becca. You
There's
know,
number of
not,
buildings. If you
not
look-
knowing,
Look at each
Can I
building, they're
just-
different colors.
can I just, then, not knowing the function of the buildings in a mixed-use development. Um, you know, it's hard to gauge the aesthetics and how it's fitting the context.
As Justin said, the first building is a retail, has a retail, you know, use and component, where the other ones have the flex space components, which is for people coming in and out. So they are variations. They're not each one is not unique. However, they are similar, but they are differentiated with some detail work and colors. So we can't put in a brand new design and building in each building. There is a cost, you know, perspective here as well as aesthetic. So we are trying to meet that, you know, that line and dance in that on that floor. However, we're trying to do the best we can, putting all the components together to make this all work in many ways.
Let's look at building 1 through 6 individually. And you can make your point, because I think your point is valid. And somehow we're missing it here.
Right.
There's
The one
building
building
1.
has a retail use, and then the other five, excuse me, there's a total of 5 buildings. So it's first one is retail use, and the other 4 are flex space use. So that's
Let's
the
look at building
definition.
2.
2 through 5, yeah.
Okay, it's got a canopy over the entrance doors, and then there's no canopy over the garage doors.
It's also the unique positioning of that one building. It's kind of at the gateway and it has a little bit more room on the site. If you look at the site plan, it'll probably make a little bit more sense to look at the whole architecture holistically.
And you got
And
a
then-
different, you got a tan color on building 2. So what's building 3 look like?
Y'all got to step us through because it's hard to see. Like,
Let's
okay, we
build
know
it
what
three.
1 looks like. Now we know what 2 looks like. Let's go to the next one so we can see.
Yeah, let's look at 3.
You have an overall perspective, that shows all of this on one shot.
3's just like it, except it's
Just a
gray.
different color, right?
It's the same details as 2. Building 4. Same details as 2 and 3. Different color. 5, same details, but different layout.
That swaps the.
You swap the canopies. You
Canopies,
got
yeah.
canopies over overhead doors instead of over walk doors. Believe
Hey,
it or
this
not, you
is-
need to have canopies over an entrance door around here because it rains a lot and rains hard.
I wanted to point out, in between each buildings, they are very similar, but we did try to include some different aspects in each one, whether that be changing some lighting fixtures or adding canopies over the doors.
Back, we're looking at 5 now. We got that embedded in mind. What's 4 look like again? Back up to 4.
Next time I'll include these back to back. So sorry about that.
This is 4
Different awning entirely.
and nothing over the roll top of the garage.
Right. It's a different canopy entirely.
Yeah.
So 3. Same awning as on 5,
It's slightly different.
but it's over the doors, entrances, not the garage doors.
There's 3 designs for 5 buildings.
Yeah, and 2,
One is the retail, and then there's 2 different designs for the flex.
no, you got separate designs. You're defeating your purpose. You got different designs on all your buildings. You got different colors on all your buildings. But what you've done, you got 2 types of awnings and you've alternated those. And in one building, you put them on the overhead doors instead of the walk doors. And now the other buildings, the awnings are over the walk doors, not the drive-through doors. There's a difference there.
Does that perspective architectural rendering show all the,
Do you have a continuous street so we can see all the buildings together?
right
I think
with
if you
us?
go up.
It shows 2 of them with awnings over the drive-through doors.
Is this rendering accurate to the elevations? Where are the canopies over the garage doors?
This is on 5, and this is not accurate to the elevations.
So it's kind of hard
The
to
rendering.
evaluate something when it's not accurate.
Yeah, I don't know what we're
And-
approving or not approving.
Are the building heights going to vary or again, that's not the intent?
Hey, this is Laurie with Vignette Architecture as well. I'm listening in as well. I think it's the perspective that this view is offering. I do think that we are showing the canopies over the garage doors as well as alternating them over the storefront doors too. I don't know if a different view would be needed. I guess a different rendering showing kind of more of a walking approach up to these buildings. Would that be helpful for you guys to see?
I think accurate drawings would be helpful.
Yeah, whatever you can do to.
Further
most-
details, you know, you're showing us the foundation landscaping here, but then you're saying you don't intend on doing it. So I think it's kind of hard to make an overall evaluation.
Well, we can make it, let's get rid of this project. It's dragged on enough. let's say the foundation planning shall meet the rendering. Be the same as the rendering. Let them work the details out with staff. The buildings are the buildings and they're not bad. They're okay. And they're hidden in the back of nowhere. There are 200 people a year that are going to see these buildings. You can't see them from the highway. Let's just get rid of the project. Move on.
How are the, thank you, Bill. How are we talked about the HVAC screening or that it's on the roof. Typically, if it's on the roof, we want it screened.
But we don't have anything to show.
Yeah, well, I
Have
need to show
screen
it.
in the back, sides,
Typically,
front, you can't see.
There's nothing here to show us what it would look, what it's going
Right.
to be.
Right, I think our intent for if there are rooftop units, we would place them closer to the back of the building. So you wouldn't be able to see the rooftop units if you were a person that's walking on the sidewalks. So,
Okay.
and if you were able to see them from, I guess, the sidewalk down, we would use similar materials to screen those that we've used on the building.
We're
So maybe the
concerned,
metal panel.
we're concerned
sorry.
that the neighbors would have an ugly view and we want to be protective of the neighbors as well as people coming here. So we need to see drawings that show that screening
How this is going to look.
and where they're going to be and what the height is. Because what happens is, not that y'all would do this, but we get this all the time of, yeah, it's going to be screened. Then they put up a 2-foot little screen wall and it's a 5-foot HVAC unit. So, or, restaurant vent or whatever. So we need some assurances. Not that we're doubting you wouldn't do it, but all we have to go by is these drawings, and they've got to be right. They've got to be accurate, and they've got to show, for one, that the things are being screened. And we haven't talked even about electrical units. So there's a transformer. Where's the transformer going to be? We need to know that. Where's all the meters going to go? Are they going to be on this first building on the right? And there's, 10 of them. If that's the case, then we need the
Each
wall.
building has to have separate meters.
Yeah.
And disconnect switches.
Yeah. So where are they?
They gotta be on the back or the side.
But again, they're not showing.
Well, we don't have electrical draws, but they'll probably be on the back of the building. That's sensible.
Probably, but people do crazy things.
They're either going to go on the back or on the side, so that they're out of view. And as you can see, that there's a lot going on the side. There's nothing in between the buildings. And there's, we can put them in the back or on the side, depending on which building. But we don't have electrical yet because we need to get past DRB so that we can get to electrical and engineering and, other items as well. Get to Dominion and everybody else.
If I may, just to provide some clarity for the applicant and the board, just to reiterate, this was not given preliminary approval, and the request was for final, but I believe this is the first time that we've really had fully flushed architecture for the board to review, which is why there's a lot of discussion revolving around that. But just to be clear, typically there's conceptual, preliminary, and then final, which I know Bowman is familiar with as well, working with the town, and we also have a new board member. So I just want to make sure it's clear that this is typical conversation, especially because at the previous meetings, the architecture had not been really walked through fully with the board.
You're absolutely right. And the last architecture we saw was completely different from this.
Yeah.
So all this is new. So final, in my opinion, is not appropriate for right now. But there's a lot of details that have to be worked through. I think y'all are tracking the right direction, but there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions. And I want to give you the opportunity to present your samples if you want to. We can walk through that and we can give you feedback on samples.
Can we have the architect describe the design? And maybe from a, higher level than the details of light fixtures. So what are you trying to create here architecturally, aesthetic wise, and how are you going about doing it? And then also the samples will help too. So let's go into a design.
Hey, so I think the intention around the design of the building was to speak to the local architecture that's around the building or around the surrounding areas and kind of create that I guess, what is that?
Low country.
The low country vibe. So the light fixtures we're using are the gooseneck-like fixtures to kind of bring in that aesthetic, as well as kind of the colors that we're presenting too. So I think,
Can we look at an elevation or something and maybe you can point out what you're talking about? And I would say, let's skip building one. Building one's very nice. Unless someone else has some detailed questions. I'd like to see what the majority of the buildings are. I'll let the architect decide how he wants to present this.
Okay, as for the rest of the flex spaces, we've tried to incorporate a low country style brick. You should have the sample with you now. But that's the brick we've decided to implicate within these buildings, as well as the carriage style garage doors to be paneled wood. The front facades would primarily be board and batten siding, varying in different colors as you guys see throughout the different flex spaces. But as you wrap around the building, just to have a cost perspective and understand that we've wrapped the rest of the building that's not as visible with the metal paneling to match the siding.
So what is the storefront base under the realty elevation there? Is that meant to be just a low wood base? What are you showing there?
I believe we're showing lap siding, which has
Under the realty office, you're showing something, it's either wood or it's metal.
Oh, that's cementitious trim board in between.
How high?
Let me check the elevations. About 10 feet, looks like 9 feet.
I see it. It's 8 3/4 inch.
11'4", yes, sir. Okay.
8 3/4.
Yep. Okay.
That building looks fine to us.
And the slope of the awning in front of the corner building, what is that? It looks kind of flat.
1 to 12
Do you know what
pitch.
the slope is?
Yes, sir, 1 to 12.
Y'all think the porch detailing looks low country?
Close enough.
I want to get, what does wood look canopy mean? What is that material? So that's not wood. So what is it?
I believe it's aluminum wrapped
that-
to,
I think it's the aluminum that they showed us. That's the same thing. The big, yeah,
Just that.
that I think.
Thank you.
the wood look would be an aluminum material that would help the longevity of the product last.
It also gives a nice aesthetic as well, because it's not real wood, but it looks like real wood, so it makes it look very appropriate.
Correct.
And that extends all the way down to the sidewalk and meets the sidewalk, and there's no fear of water issues with that material and whatever else is behind that material.
Where do you see that?
So this is just going down to the ground.
Right.
What are you talking? That post?
Yeah, but the post is this.
The
Well, the
metal,
post is gonna be something else. That's just covered.
correct.
Well, yeah, but that's the skin. What you'll see is that.
What you're gonna
Yeah.
see.
But that just goes down.
Turn it
to
around.
that.
Turn it around. You see the front side.
This is the material. It's like, I don't get it.
So it's gonna be probably a metal post or a wood post with metal cover.
Right, so the
Well,
products
we
that we
don't know.
typically, the products that we
Well,
typically use will grab their details
look
and
like
ensure that
metal
they're
cover.
installed per manufacturer's recommendations, and we'll note that on the plans.
That metal can go right to the concrete. Be just fine.
I'm just not a,
How is this, what is this wood graining? How is that created? Is it just gonna peel off with time and weathering?
Based on our understanding of how the products are made, it's kind of baked into that surface, and the manufacturer has warranties on there that if it ever did start peeling or weathering, that they would be replaced within a certain time period.
Warranty's 22 years and 6 months.
Yeah, I would say you need to provide staff with the warranty information, because durability of exterior materials is in the UDO, it is required.
I'm not,
Okay.
I am typically not a fan of man-made materials trying to look like a natural material. So if you want to use wood, use wood. If you want to use metal, but don't paint metal with wood grain. Make it Charleston green, or, you know, make it, which is black.
Well, that's what I do, and that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's more low country, but calling it wood-like or wood look or whatever.
The
is
KISS
just-
principle, keep it simple.
But this is not your opinion here, so that, you know, this
Absolutely
is
it is.
warranted. No, but it's warranted. You can't say, I don't like the wood look and say, well, this is not appropriate. The wood look is appropriate here. It's got a warranty and we can provide you with that. But to say you don't like it is not right.
We had a applicant last month that took a picture of brick, applied it to a wall and said it was a brick wall. This is not that different.
Right.
Totally not agreeing with that last comment, sir. Not at all. These are appropriate materials that have a long-standing warranty. Have you ever heard of Hardy Plank? That's put on multi-million-dollar homes. We're putting it on flex space, which is more than appropriate.
Do you guys have that wood look sample of the metal panel on there today?
We sure
that
do,
you
right
can
here.
present?
Yep, we're looking at it.
Okay. And that is similar, so I think that is the exact same color that we were proposing with, that is shown in the renderings too. Is that the material that you're not a fan of?
I think there's durability questions. There's repair questions. There is seaming questions. So there's a lot of questions that over time, a unique material like this could fail, almost like vinyl siding. That we want to ensure that the city wants to ensure that the aesthetics that we approve today are the aesthetics that we're going to realize 10 years from now.
Okay,
And for me,
understood.
it's more
So,
like what Chris said, if it's supposed to be, look like wood, why not use wood?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's for, and you could argue for the durability, I don't know, but typically metal that is supposed to look like wood doesn't always look that
Do
great.
something that doesn't look like a faux wood grain.
Correct. Or just do metal, yeah,
Do
that
metal.
doesn't have to have a wood grain, do a different color.
Any other discussion? All right. Any other things from the applicant? Okay, we're gonna close the discussion then. They're asking for final approval.
I'll make a motion that we do not grant final approval, that the applicant considers everything that was discussed and come back with what we would call the preliminary design, showing and addressing all the details we discussed, which is what we're used to. And I think you can get with staff to discuss what should be included in preliminary design presentation to the DRB. And since the next DRB meeting is next week, I don't know how fast you can work
Yeah.
and get that together. But hopefully you don't lose.
They've already missed the deadline for.
Have
next
they?
week, As far as I know, yeah.
Okay,
Next month.
I retract that statement.
Can we go ahead and do it anyway if they can get
That's up to staff.
package together?
That's up to staff.
I send the packet out tomorrow. So
I retract that statement.
Okay, so you have a motion for denial and a restudy of the items we talked about, HVAC screening, the grading issues we talked about a bunch. Materiality on different things, screening of HVAC, foundation planting, those were the highlights. Right. So, that's the motion. Would someone like to make a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in
Notice.
favor?
Is there any benefit of granting preliminary approval this time? For the applicant?
I'd say no, because the renderings are not accurate. So I would not even know what we're,
preliminary typically, if it's granted, states, that you are good with the overall massing, location of buildings, the street access.
Well, I think we're good with that overall massing. I think we're good with the location of the buildings and the street access.
Yeah.
Correct? We're
Yeah.
okay with those things.
Right.
There's no timeline benefit.
Right, that was the question.
All right, so we have, I already called for the vote, so all vote in favor of the motion, say aye and just raise your hand, please. Aye, any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Take care.
We appreciate you setting this time aside just for this.
Thank you. And then you can either leave your samples here or take them with you. Either way.
And I don't have anything under miscellaneous, so if y'all don't have any questions for me, we can get a motion in a second to adjourn.
I have a motion for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?